We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing because followed by the Pledge of Allegiance will be a silent moment of reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
United States
and
of
to
America.
The republic for which it
The
stands,
republic for which
one
it
nation,
stands,
under
one
God,
nation,
indivisible,
under God,
with
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will move on to item number 3, reading of the notice, please.
An educational meeting of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors will be held at the Marathon County Courthouse, Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street in the city of Wausau at 7 p.m. on Thursday, March 18, 2021, and the agenda was duly signed and posted.
Thank you. And I would like to request everyone who is participating by WebEx, everyone here in person, please either put your phones or WebEx on silent as to not to interrupt the meeting, and when you're called upon and recognized, then you'll be allowed to speak and address the board. So I'd like to have everyone silence their cell phones and any other electronic devices not to interrupt the meeting. And we would proceed to roll call, and I'd ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Beestrom. Bizotto.
Here.
Boots.
Here.
Book.
Present.
Butke.
Here.
Christensen.
Here.
Seiler.
Here.
Conway. Here. Drabeck. Here. Pfeifrick.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Gibbs.
Here.
Gonering.
Here.
Guild.
Here.
Gums.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
Jacobson. Johnson.
Here.
Lamont.
Here.
Longenhan.
Here.
Leahy.
Here.
Lowe.
Here.
Mask. McEwen.
Here.
Oberbeck.
Here.
Opal.
Here.
Robinson.
Here.
Rosenberg.
Here.
Schley. Soibert. Stark.
Here.
Vole.
Here.
Zhang.
Here.
Beestrom.
Here.
Soibert. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to welcome all of the visitors we have here with us in person, and also the viewing audience, and also those that are joining by phone and or WebEx. And we will move on to item number 7, 15-minute public comment. We do have 6 individuals who have registered, and if there is not an objection, I will extend the 15-minute public comment to allow each speaker to have 3 minutes to address the board. And so we will start with the first registered individual, Tina Jensen, 178808 Pine View Road, Burnhamwood. Tina, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. I'm taking public comment due to the non-transparency of hiring on behalf of the county officials, particularly the diversity committee. We had first heard about the openings just in a meeting that we were on the telephone with, that there was 2 openings and 2 candidates were already in line to get those jobs. So a couple of us, me included, applied, no interview. And first, most of the Marathon County doesn't even know that a diversity committee exists. They believe that HR is still being tasked to do that job and their job. If we insist in keeping these committees, then I think it's the duty and job and obligation of the committee and the board and the supervisors to get the county informed on the openings, as well as what these boards are doing, what we're paying for. So I guess online forums really are not getting the job done. We need to have training maybe on how we can inform these people, the constituents, the county members, about the boards and how to go about applying for these positions. There seems to be zero diversity of thought and convictions going on within the diversity board itself. This has become apparent with the trainings that are going on. It's become apparent with things that are continually brought before the board. I want people on the board that are actually against social and cultural agendas, specifically ones that are targeting children through sexual and mental abuse, which seems to be a frightening status quo right now within our nation. Right now, we're fighting federal administration bent on legalizing sexual abuse via an Equality Act, and many people in the county feel that now we're having to keep our children safe right here in our county from sexual abuse and mental abuse coming down from the agenda-driven authority. So we would love to see diversity within the diversity committee. We want people that do not want to push gender dysphoria or woke guilt based on lack of melanin in the skin, people that know the difference between equality and equity. And we don't want people that want to diminish our freedom of rights, especially our First Amendment of speaking out against things that we disagree with. And that is all.
Excuse me. Thank you, Tina. And we will move on to the second individual who is registered, and that is Nelgis Wellhafer. Nelgis, if you would, come up here, the microphone, and use the microphone. You will have 3 minutes.
Hello?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate being here. I really love, the America, very much. Offer a lot of freedom and all that, and that is kind of like why America became so great. The unity. We all together. We all like helping each other and to grow. Pushing. And so just lately, with things just going on, it just kind of gave me the motivation to figure out, like, oh, this is not right. Like the stuff that going on, lately, like in school with kids and stuff. And I have my children and stuff too, and I don't want to see them, forced in those things. And so I did apply for the job and stuff. And the good news is I did receive I received the email back, but wasn't about. I received the email, but it wasn't like, we would like you to come see, get interview and stuff. So that was a little bit disappointed to see that. Like I applied, but like no follow up of interview and stuff, something like that. So, but that's it.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Aaron Crawford. Nuggies, his address is 2710 Jelnick Avenue, Schofield. And now we have Aaron Crawford, 234905 Clay Road, Anawa. Aaron, you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My comments tonight are on behalf of another Marathon County resident, Barbara Parlier, who was unable to make it tonight with her commitment, so she's asked me to communicate publicly on her behalf to the board. And her statement reads as follows. My name is Barbara Parlier. I grew up on a farm in Edgar, and I've lived in Marathon City for 44 years. I want you to know that I applied for the position of citizen member on the Diversity Affairs Committee, but was not given an opportunity to interview. I would think that all candidates could have been interviewed to make sure there would be diversity from all areas of the county and bring needed and different perspectives, especially from the rural communities and districts. I'd strongly recommend that supervisors and citizens have a transparent process available to them that communicates 1, what citizen positions exist, 2, what are the available openings, and 3, what are the corresponding application deadlines for them. Currently, I'm understanding that there is no transparency and none of this information is available. So I'm curious to know how the 2 appointees received word of the openings. Furthermore, please consider that these citizen appointees, which amount to 6 in all, are unelected positions making decisions that affect all of us in this county. This is additionally concerning. Any county supervisor who cares about constitutional freedoms should be very concerned with who is appointed on this or any other subcommittee. Without this needed transparency, we end up with a diversity affairs committee filled with citizens who are strongly biased in one political direction, yet having influence over all constituents and citizens in this county. Because of these reasons, we ask that you please suspend the vote on appointees this coming Tuesday. There was no official public notice nor opportunity for citizens to consider the available positions with hard deadlines in place. Please demand more transparency going forward, and please consider the substantial lack of transparency that has led to continual partisan appointments. The current process of appointments to the Diversity Affairs Committee is at best unfair and unrepresented by the majority of the constituents in this county and is treading into unethical waters. Thank you, Barbara Parlier.
Thank you. And we will go to speaker number 4, David Baker, 690 Happy Hollow Road, Cronenwitter. David, are
Good
you with
evening.
us on the
My
phone?
comment. Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, David. Go ahead. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My comments tonight are on behalf of Diversity Affairs applicant Ron Cavelli from District 33, who was unable to attend this evening. Mr. Cavelli has prepared the following written statement. Thank you, Chairman Gibbs and Board Supervisors, for allowing me to express my testimony on the process for bringing forth committee nominations to the board for approval. I recently applied to be on the Diversity Committee and found the application process quite easy to access online. When after a week of not hearing back on where I stood in the process, I contacted Chairman Gibbs to inquire about the process. Thank you, Chairman Gibbs, for the information. It was much appreciated. Chairman Gibbs expressed to me that there really is no formal process in place currently, and that Administrator Leonard reviews the applicants and bring forth the names that he would like to present. As a past Church Council Vice President, Scoutmaster, American Legion Activities Chairman, Endowment Fund Committee Chair, and Quality Director, my experiences with application processes and processes in general, I find this would be the least transparent process for vetting the best applicants. I would tend to think that putting that in the hands of one person would be a burden to the Administrator Leonard and allow for some mixed reactions from the residents of Marathon County. Chairman Gibbs suggested to me that this process will probably need some review. I'm guessing that if there are more applicants than positions, then the current process is not adequate for transparency and for vetting all applicants. I would suggest to the board that the approval of the current nominees be tabled until the full board can review all applicants for the positions available. Thank you for the time you have allowed me to express my thoughts on this topic. As a longtime resident of Marathon County, I would like to see more transparency in this process. Thank you all for your service to our community. On behalf of Ron Cavelli, District 33 resident.
Thank you, David. And we will go on to speaker number 5, Patrick Betcher, 505 South 22nd Avenue, Wausau. Patrick, please. And you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Gibbs. And I just came to the board meeting tonight because I am one of the appointees. I filled out the appropriate paperwork. I guess it's not clear to me that there's contention in that process. I'm here to answer any questions that anyone might have for me, and I would hope that this process for this particular committee is no different than your process for all the other committees that the county has. In addition, I'm also on a city committee for the city of Wausau in historic preservation. I applied because I'm interested in working on local government and being a part of making positive things happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And the last individual who has registered is Gary Rabeau. Gary? Address for Gary is 4609 Hilltop Avenue, Wausau.
Thank you. I'm 76, and this is my first board meeting, but I won't ask you to recap the other ones. Okay, it started out, number one, I didn't hear of this diversity committee either. And when I did, I thought the first thing I did is, pandering to the political correct East Coast and the West Coast is finally settling in Marathon County. And I know what's coming after this, but my other comment is if I wanted to get rid of diversity, if I wanted to get rid of inclusiveness, how would I do it? Would I put a sign on a business saying, by color only, these people are allowed, these people aren't? Gender, would that be my protocol? But really, diversity is thought, ideas. And if I put that up, I wouldn't know how to judge anybody. I don't know anybody here what they're thinking right now or their ideas for the future. So this politically correct, good intentions, I might add. We all want utopia, but this fact that you cannot be offended reminds me of, and I wore the uniform for 20 years, so these people didn't fight for you to be sorry for yourself or pity because you got offended. Take the opportunity of your differences, escalate them, and run with the ship. Everything is on the table. But I don't like being pressured or insinuated, and I might add, the crowd that is for diversity is the first ones, usually, that can't accept it when it don't go their way. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have decorum in the room, please. So the 15-minute public comment period has ended, and we will move on to item number 8, education presentations and reports. Under item 8A, standing committee chairpersons or designees. Any presentations or reports by standing committee chairpersons?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Robinson, go
Supervisor
ahead.
Robinson. I'd just like to update the board. Earlier today, the Wisconsin Public Service Commission made announcements relative to the awards for the broadband expansion project, and the Wittenberg Telephone Company's application serving the area south of Hatley was approved. There were 124 applications and 58 were funded. The demand exceeded the dollars by 3 times. Unfortunately, the 2 other projects that affected Marathon County submitted by Bug Tussle and Northwoods Connect did not receive funding at this time. One of the things that impacted them was the Rural Opportunity Development Fund awards earlier this year to LTD and Charter Communication Company, that there was overlap and generally there was a strong it seemed like bias, or there was a preference to fund fiber to the home projects like the Wittenberg telephone report. So the good news is we're expanding broadband in the county, and we've got additional work to do.
Thank you. Supervisor Zhang is next. Supervisor Zhang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to provide an update to the full board that the community for all resolution is still being worked on. We're hoping to be able to bring it back in a month or two here. We're still receiving some feedback from members of the community and some other organizations here. So just wanted to keep the board updated about the current progress. Thank you.
Okay, any other chairman's announcements and or reports?
Supervisor Booth.
Supervisor Boots, go ahead.
There was another meeting for the system budgeting and the evidence board budgeting for the criminal justice system yesterday. I was not able to make it, but my vice chair was able to make it, and I did talk with Lance about it, and it went really good. And just letting you know, we're still working on it, and we should be ready with some sort of report by June, like promised. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements and or reports? Okay. The item number 8B, update and progress on the North Central campus renovation. That item is being pulled. We're still working on that presentation and hope to have it possibly available on Tuesday. And we will move on to review and discussion of Thursday's meeting agenda items. Item number 9A, memorial. There'll be the memorial for former Supervisor Don Christensen will be read on Tuesday. And so now we go down to item 9B, Diversity Affairs Commission appointments, Thomas Wendt and Patrick Bacher. And I have asked the administrator to explain the process that has been not only a standing history in the county, but the potential process improvement and the process improvement that the administrator put in place so that everybody is clear on what process was used about this recommendation as far as an appointment moving forward. Administrator Leonard.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs, and I appreciate the opportunity to come before you today. And I'll start with, I think a good frame of reference, and one that I take with staff frequently is the refrain that continuous improvement needs to be part of how we approach every day. And I'll walk you through what our historical process was. I'll explain to you, as the chair referenced, what our current process is. And I am truly excited for feedback. I'm very excited that we have more people applying for these appointment processes, and if we can improve them, trust me, I'll be the first person to work with you to do that. Historically, and I will pull up on our website here in just a moment so our people from public access can switch the screen, but historically, through the Marathon County Board rules and provided by statute, the county administrator is it's their responsibility, his or her responsibility, bring forward appointments to a wide variety of boards, commissions, and committees. And in Marathon County, if you go to our website, we have historically had a list of those committees, those boards, and those commissions on our website. And if you, I think, Kim, if you hit the presentation button. Oh, perfect. So you guys are one step ahead of me. If you go to our website, and you go to County Board, we had historically had a list under, there's a list of standing committees, but if you click on boards and committees, there had historically been the list below talking about each of those committees, and if you click on one, it tells you about the mission, the membership, and the responsibility of each of those boards, committees, and commissions. In an attempt to expand government involvement, allow the opportunity for additional individuals who are interested in serving to express that interest, I implemented an online process where, and you can read, if you're a citizen resident of Marathon County and have an interest in serving on a board, committee, or commission, you can submit that interest by clicking on the form below. And if you do click that form, it takes you to, again, a full site. And this is a perfect example of our broadband. It's going slowly, but it's an online fillable form where you enter your name. You then are presented with a full choice of all of the various committees that you can choose from, and you have the opportunity to write a narrative about why you're interested, your background and experience. We allow you to submit references if necessary, and we also encourage you to submit a resume. And again, the intent is that we allow people, my intent was, and if there's I strongly encourage feedback. If there's a better way to do this, I'm certainly, I'll be the first one to implement that. We had it so that rather than post a vacancy, we allow people the form allows for individuals to express their interest at any time, and we then retain that information as is said on the form for 3 years. My thought process in doing that was to be more efficient so that individuals could access at their leisure, could express interest in any one or multiple of the committees, and then when we do have a vacancy, that we would have a group of people who have already expressed interest, and we could pull from that group of people and appoint someone. I would bring a name forward for the consideration to the county board. So that was the intent with the process. Again, to expand the reach of the appointment process as opposed to simply having the administrator, quite honestly, make calls or reach out to people he or she knew. I wanted to make that more open to the entire public. Now, this wasn't my idea. I shamelessly borrowed this idea from other governments that have implemented a similar process. So that is the current process that I implemented shortly after being appointed as administrator. So the specific process in this instance with Mr. Wendt and Mr. Bacher that have applied, I can let you know that Mr. Wendt, actually, we received an email. I received an email from Mayor Rosenberg. With Mr. Wendt CC'd on that email, my understanding is Mr. Wendt had met the mayor of the city of Wausau and had expressed interest in serving on a city of Wausau committee. Unfortunately for him with that interest, he resides outside of the city limits. So the mayor, knowing that I have the privilege of making those recommendations to the board, forwarded that email to me. I returned an email so that email came to me on Thursday, January 28th. I responded to Mr. Wendt on Saturday, January 30th, explaining that I would get in touch with him after reviewing his email. I responded on Tuesday, February 2nd, and provided him a link to this very form that I showed you today. And I directed him to, if he was interested in serving on a county committee, that he could complete that online form, that application of interest. Mr. Wendt submitted that application of interest for two committees, the Diversity Affairs Commission, excuse me, and the Social Services Board. He did that on February 18th. Mr. Wendt also submitted his resume or curriculum vitae, which is included in your board packet. He did that on that same process on February 18th. Mr. Bacher, who's before you today, appeared before you earlier, contacted county administration using the general online email for administration on February 1st, expressing an interest in serving on the Diversity Affairs Commission. My executive assistant responded to him the following day, explaining to him that the county utilizes the online form, provided the link to that form to Mr. Bacher, indicating that once he submits that form, county administration would communicate with him. I was CC'd on that email on February 2nd, which prompted me actually later in the day to reach out to Diversity Affairs Commission Chair Zhang to inquire if he had any vacancies on that commission based on the email from Mr. Bacher, as I was not aware of any. And in fact, Mr. Bacher then completed the form, I believe, on February 5th. And Supervisor Zhang had informed me that, in fact, he had 2 vacancies. So having those 2 individuals express interest using the form, I spoke with each by telephone, generally explaining, walking through the mission, responsibility, and membership of the committee. I inquired of them about their experience, and they seemed genuinely interested in serving. At that time, I had 2 applicants for those 2 commission spots. I spoke with them prior to February 24th by phone. I invited them to attend the Diversity Affairs Commission meeting on the 24th, and I had indicated, again, based on the fact I had 2 applications for 2 spots, that I would be recommending their appointment at this March meeting this month. At that meeting, on the Diversity Affairs Commission meeting on the 24th, each attended, observed the meeting, had follow-up contact with me via email regarding the meeting, and I brought forward the recommendations today. I did, as many of the individuals that spoke today in public comment. After that time, I have received, and I think it's excellent that we have more individuals wanting to get involved in county government. I received several online form submissions beginning on March 2nd from Mr. Ronald Covelli, on the 3rd from Henry Kremnister, on the March 5th from Nelgus Wellhofer, on the 5th from Tina Jensen, on the 6th from Barbara Parlier, and on the 9th from Paul Harold. I've responded by email to each, and I apologize if it wasn't timely, but I have responded prior to today to all of them, explaining succinctly. I tried to explain succinctly that I had 2 individuals that I already expressed to them that I'd be bringing their recommendations forward, and that in the event I had a vacancy, I would be in contact with them if they registered for Diversity Affairs. Several actually indicated multiple interests, including the Public Library Board and the Park Commission. I have been able to confirm that the Public Library Board currently does not have any vacancies. The Park Commission likewise has no vacancies, but I do intend on reaching back out. I was able to confirm yesterday with the Social Services Director that we have a couple of vacancies on our Citizen Review Panel for social services, and I intend to reach out to see if they're interested in serving in that capacity. So that's the kind of an overview of the historical process, the process that I put in place upon being appointed administrator. Again, if there's a more effective way to do this, I'm certainly open to it. In fact, I've been working with the county clerk to try to identify and work through a couple of issues we have with maintaining appropriate and timely lists on who's appointed and whether there are any vacancies. We're working through that. And also providing training to new members so that they do provide notice to either the chair or myself, depending on who the appointing authority is, of a resignation, because I was made aware that one of the resignations had existed since October, which certainly is something I want to work to improve. So that is the overview, Mr. Chair, and if anyone has any questions or concerns, I certainly would answer any questions. I have also asked the chair to put on rules review a discussion on this exact topic, the topic of how can we do a better job of communicating to the public, as was referenced, the opportunity to serve on these commissions, whether that's through a posting of an actual vacancy or some other form of advertising. Again, I certainly take responsibility. If I did not take the initiative to post for vacancies, instead, in my estimation, it was more efficient to allow for appointment or application, I should say, at any time. But if it's the will of the board to do something else, I'm certainly open to that. This was, again, a step, what I believe to be a step forward in terms of continuous improvement. But if there's a better way to do it, please offer your suggestions through rules review or contact me directly. I'm certainly open to those. So with that, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Leonard. Is there any questions of Administrator Leonard about the process that he has used?
Supervisor Stark, I got my hand up.
Supervisor Stark, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the administrator for his overview, and a couple of constituents of mine actually contacted me after they saw this on the agenda, and they were not aware of the process. And I have to confess my sin here. I was not aware of the process. And I contacted the administrator, and I also copied in the chair saying, you know, I don't know how to respond to this. Can you guys help me? And Administrator Leonard responded with a very good overview to help me respond. But when I passed that information on to these constituents, they immediately said, you know, we didn't know about this. We've been on the county website. It's not real easy to navigate, and it's not, you know, real obvious. And you know, to somebody that's not savvy with the website, I can understand that. And they said we had no idea that this was coming forward. And they suggested that in addition to maybe some education out there, like we just went through, that, you know, the citizens that are interested would potentially see this on the meetings anyway. But in addition, they suggested, a couple of people suggested, perhaps a formal posting, or when there's an opening, that the public be made aware, and that could be through posting maybe on the website, also maybe something like city pages or publication and the local you know, media like we do for other postings. And they just said right now they feel that the process was not as transparent, or they didn't know about it, or how to go about it. And also they were concerned that they felt like if there was any way to put off filling these slots right now until they had an opportunity to fill out an application, because they didn't feel like the full field of potential candidates was going to be able to be considered by the administrators. So, I mean, I just throw that out there because, I mean, while I hate to, you know, jump on here and say, hold the phone on these two people that have already kind of been, not kind of, they've been vetted, that there are other people that maybe have similar or potentially even greater qualifications that, had they had notice, would have come forward. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Vice Chair McEwen.
Mr. Chair,
Jacob, you will be next. Supervisor Langenhan, you'll be the next speaker. Vice Chair McEwen is recognized at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Supervisor Stark just alluded to, I received several phone calls and emails about these openings on diversity affairs, and I'm glad that not only did the administrator didn't know about the openings, I didn't either. And then the comment was, well, if county board supervisors don't know about it, how is the public supposed to know about it? And I said, well, I referred them to Administrator Leonard. I said, I don't know what the process is exactly, and I'm not going to speak to something I'm not sure about. But I do agree that there could have been more transparency as far as you know, making these vacancies at least aware to the county board supervisors, possibly. However, the one was vacant since October, so that doesn't seem like that's a very needed appointment, but that's beside the point. But anyways, I would just like to say that I'm not opposing these two individuals. I'm just saying that I think the process, as far as transparency, could be improved. And like you said, those are things we can talk about on rules review. But like I said, I didn't realize this was such a popular commission to be on. But when they saw this on the county board agenda, that's when I started receiving the emails. So, thank you.
Supervisor Langenhan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a couple questions here, and I think all of them can be directed toward Administrator Leonard, so I'm hoping he can help me out. Administrator Leonard, I know you touched on this during your introduction there, walking us through the process, which thank you. I think that serves all 38 members of the county board very well. And the question is, how many people in total for the two openings applied? How many people applied for the two openings on the diversity efforts?
Up until today's date, and this is, I had my executive assistant run this a couple of days ago, so I can't say for sure if it's through today. But in addition to Mr. Bacher and Mr. Wendt, let me just add the total number to. We now have a total of 8. Again, Mr. Bacher submitted on the 5th. Mr. Wendt submitted his online application on the 18th. I then received the remaining 6 beginning on March 2nd. And in terms of timing, again, by that point, I had already spoken with Mr. Bacher and Mr. Wendt and indicated that I had no other applicants and I was moving their name forward. So it certainly isn't any statement on the qualifications of the other individuals or their genuine interest. But I had those total of 8 applicants, Mr. Langenhan, Supervisor Langenhan.
Thank you, Administrator Leonard. And a follow-up, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Supervisor Langenhan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How long, and this is in regards to the comments of our Vice Chair, how long have each of these committee positions, these appointments, been vacant?
My understanding is that one was vacated in October of last year, and the most recent one, and I'll defer to Chair Zhang and either Supervisor Conway or Supervisor Leahy, who are on the committee, but I believe the most recent individual resigned to Chair Zhang in early February or late January. But again, I think one of the areas we have a significant opportunity for improvement is really those resignations should be in writing to the appointing authority, which would either be for the Diversity Affairs Commission and many other commissions, myself, or to Chair Gibbs for those committees, commissions, and boards that he appoints for. But I did receive an email from Chair Zhang, excuse me, in response to my email in early February. I believe it was the 2nd or the 3rd.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Chair, one, I guess you could call it one last follow-up and then a request.
Go ahead, Supervisor Langenhan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And then, Administrator Leonard, I might be asking this question prematurely, and this might even be part of the request that I make, but how many, what's the timing that we post for a typical job position in the county? How long do we the window open for collecting resumes?
Depending on the nature of the position, anywhere, as a general rule, I would say between 2 and 4 weeks.
Thank you. And then my request is, Mr. Chair, and this will be directed to the work of the Rules Review Committee, that in addition to the items that Administrator Leonard listed in his introduction or process walkthrough, that we also review the committees that the administrator makes citizen appointments to, and then we also review the timing and the process to which the administrator or the chair are notified of vacancies. Again, Lance, I want to thank you for the additional information tonight. I think it served us all very well. Thank you, Administrator, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Lamont is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a constituent who submitted an application, when he saw the two openings mentioned in the meeting minutes. And then his application was acknowledged with some commentary that others had applied. So I appreciated Administrator Leonard's process explanation, but I don't get the feeling that my constituent received that full email explaining it, other than that others had applied, because then he went on to say that he noticed in the board's agenda 2 people were identified being brought forward. So he was surprised by that and wondered why there wasn't an interview process, screening process. Is it first come, first serve? And then he wished he would have had the opportunity to offer his qualifications for the position. And I just wonder, once you have those 2 people, we have 6 more, is it possible to go back and review those others to make sure we have the 2 best candidates? And was there a deadline posted? I agree with Administrator Langenhan in talking about the rules. That I think it should be added that there should be a deadline attached to that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Supervisor Zhang next, and then Supervisor Book is after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I just want to make this clear as well too. As a matter of fact, in regards to the commissioner that was that resigned back in October, I actually recall in the October Diversity Affairs Commission meeting, making it public and announcing that that the commissioner had resigned and that there was a vacancy during that time as well too. I think the only individual that I did not mention was the individual who resigned in February, and that was quickly followed up by the administrator. So I just want to make that clarified to obviously inform the board that it wasn't because that there was no notice or no obviously affirmation or letting the public know that the individual did resign back in October. So I do want to make that clear as well.
Supervisor Book is next.
I appreciate the explanation from Administrator Leonard. But my thought is, considering that approximately 2/3 of the diversity committee are non-elected members, it seems that new members should have very thorough vetting to ensure that the committee is absolutely diverse and balanced. It seems to me it would make sense to postpone confirmation of new members till more have had an opportunity to apply, perhaps especially a candidate from the rural areas for this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Supervisor Fisher next.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. Administrator Leonard, thank you for the explanation. It's very helpful. And I do agree with several of the other individuals that had mentioned potentially adding some additional to the rules review in regards to some deadlines and open timeframes. But I also think at this time, if we had individuals that were interested and had applied and went through the normal stated process as the rules currently show and were acceptable based on their qualifications, as a hiring manager myself, I don't give past on acceptable candidates hoping for someone better, because when you do that, you never get them. And we have right now an abundance of people that are looking to participate, residents from across the county. And I think that is an extremely wonderful problem to have if we have more people than we have spots. And I would encourage people to continue to apply. I know we have several other committees that probably have an open spot or may have an open spot next month. You never know. And so I think it is a great problem that we have more people than spots. And at this time, though, however, through the interview process, stated timely that we had people that applied and people that were interviewed. And I don't think we need to be giving past on candidates willing to throw their support to help at this time. Thank you.
Supervisor Lowe is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one question. Are these appointments, are they paid appointments?
They, can request a stipend, and the stipend is $20 per meeting plus mileage in transportation if the meeting is in person. Supervisor Leahy is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Something else that I would just like to point out for those constituents who are newer to this appointment process, and frankly, the committee process as a whole, most of these subcommittees and the Diversity Affairs Commission report to a standing committee. So just because there's citizen members doesn't mean that it's a less informed committee or that suddenly someone who's not elected has undue power or imbalanced power compared to the elected officials. You know, there's robust discussion at the subcommittee level. Any policy suggestions, resolutions that come forth out of that subcommittee then get passed on to a standing committee where it's discussed again by a group of supervisors, and it must pass that committee before it can go on to the full board to be discussed again at length if we want at the full county board level. So I just want to ensure newcomers to this process and to committee structure that these things, the ideas that we discuss are well discussed, and there's ample opportunity for public comment and for discussion amongst all of the committee members. So that's just another element that I think we should be clear about, you know, so thank you.
Okay, any other discussion?
Supervisor Bizzotto.
Supervisor Bizzotto is recognized. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. I just wanted to ask a question, which is, I really like the idea of having some sort of notice that's available, not just online. You know, we have a broadband committee for a reason, which is to say not everybody has internet access. So I'm wondering, maybe a good idea of publishing would be in the county newsletter or somewhere else. But I guess my question is, do we see any obstacles to being able to post somewhere besides online? Like, I'd like to get an idea of how feasible that is, and if we can expect that to be something that's on the table moving forward.
One of the, obviously, you know, there is a cost, obviously, to publishing, you know, any kind of notice in the paper, whether it be paper or whatever form of advertisement there would be. And then, so there would be that. And at this point, I don't know that we've have identified, you know, a funding source, but that could be addressed. And at this point, again, if there is going to be a change, it potentially, or a recommended change, there may need to be a rules change in order to implement a potential new process, or possibly a discussion about that. So yes, all of those options are available, but there's additional obstacles and stuff that would have to be overcome. Administrator Leonard would like to address part of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Supervisor Bizzotto, with respect to posting, I think one of the changes I can make based on the feedback today is the idea of having if we're going to have a posting, whether it's, even if it's just online, providing a date by which individuals would have the opportunity to continue to apply and a time at which they would be closed for consideration for a current vacancy. I can kind of work through how we would implement that, because again, in this current instance, what I had was 2 vacancies and 2 individuals that expressed interest, and I think Chair Gibbs used the word vetted. I had spoken with each by phone, reviewed their resumes or curriculum vitae, spoke with them, and informed each that I would be moving their names forward in the future to implement a process like you're referring to. What I envision doing is indicating that there is an existing vacancy and that we would continue to accept applications for consideration for a vacancy for a period of X additional weeks. And then upon that closing, consider the applicants that had applied for that vacancy. I would like to still continue the process of allowing individuals that have expressed interest to remain in the queue, for lack of a better word, for future vacancies, as we do now with our current process. If an individual expresses interest, we maintain that information for a period of 3 years in the event that we do have a vacancy. So I certainly think there's an opportunity to move forward with a posting process. Of course, the issues that Chair Gibbs raised those are things we can work out if the board directs me to move in that direction. I hope that also elaborates on that answer. Thank you.
Supervisor Boots.
Okay, I've got Supervisor Lamont next, and then it'll be Supervisor Boots.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that we postpone voting on these two positions and have Supervisor Leonard talk with the other 6 applicants, seeing that the process is incomplete. Rather than just saying, okay, we goofed up this time, let's just move forward. I think we can still give the 6 people their due, since there was no deadline, and I think that would be proper. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Lamont, this is the educational meeting and motion and this item is not on the agenda for action, so that motion would be in line on Tuesday, but not in today's meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Supervisor Boots is next.
So I've been on the board 7 years, and I guess there's never been any conflicts with our administrator appointing, whether it was Brad or now Lance. So we have a process in place. It was working. Obviously, it's not working now. A lot of this, I believe, is because of the political climate out there. There's more scrutiny for government, whether it's national, state, or local, which is fine. But we do have a policy in place at this point. We need to look at it, obviously. But after listening to Lance, this is a policy question. I don't think Lance needs to take this upon himself. This is something we as elected officials, the county board, has to take a look at. I believe, yes, the rules review is a proper place to look at that, to put a new policy in place. But I also believe we should be bringing this up to the executive committee and discussing it there, because maybe there's some things we haven't looked at in a long time and we maybe should. And let's be honest, Lance has a work plan that he's supposed to be working on. Are we really going to divert that at this point to look at something like this? And this is really the county board's job, not Lance's. So that's the way I guess I would see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Supervisor Conway.
Thank you. And my HR background is slightly more modest, but I've hired a few folks, and the 2 we have in the bush, so to speak, I think we shouldn't pass up on those, hoping for better options. But I do believe coming up, the comprehensive plan part 3.8 has a bit of an overview of how we are going to maybe be hiring a little bit differently. I think the appointment process could be folded into that, perhaps. That could be just an element that is made out of that. That might make sense. I mean, obviously go to rules review, but that might be a good place for it.
Okay, we have Supervisor Zhang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also echo and concur with the comments made by Supervisor Boots and also Supervisor Conway in regards to looking at this moving forward here in regards to obviously the rules and the procedures. That is something that I think the rules and review needs to review, and I'm definitely open to that. And as part of the objective 3.8, as Supervisor Conway mentioned, we're looking to attract and retain And this should, and I definitely agree with all the individuals that spoke today. We need to make sure that it's definitely more, transparent, open, and more inclusive of everybody as well. Making sure that the whole process is inclusive to other individuals at all as well too. Whether they're from the rural areas, whether they're Hispanic, Hmong, Black American, whatever. To be as open and inclusive as possible. So I would be willing to be supportive of that as well too. And that's part of our our objective and our strategic plan, and I think we should leave it for that as part of that objective. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Again, please keep the comments related to the appointments of the Diversity Affairs Commission or the process that was used. Supervisor Book, please.
I have one quick question as a newbie. Suppose these two people are not confirmed on Tuesday. From where does the process go then? Do we start from the beginning? Will we then have a chance to evaluate the 6 that have also applied?
I will, the 16 years, Supervisor Book, that I have been on the county board, I have never had a appointment that has been turned down. So I'll, because the appointment still would sit with the administrator. By our board rules, the appointment is for him to bring forward to this board and the names. So it would be back for him to bring forward a name, or 2 names in this case. Anything else you wanted to add?
I think that is accurate. I would, if the county board were to turn down the appointments, not move the appointments forward, not confirm the appointments, I should say, I would disregard those 2 applications, consider the other individuals that had expressed interest, and this is, again, I think someone said it before, it's a good problem to have that we have more people that have expressed interest than spots. In my tenure is short, but I have not had that in the past, save one occasion where I had an individual already serving on another commission or board that expressed interest on serving on a second. And because I had an individual who was not currently serving in any capacity on a county board subordinate committee, I indicated to the individual that was serving that my commitment was to expand the opportunities for civic engagement, so I was going to be moving forward the other individuals. So of all the appointments I've made in the past, I've never had more individuals express interest than spots. But in terms of process moving forward, if the county board were to vote down the recommendations relative to appointment, I would review the remaining applications, and I'd have to come up with, again, this is a problem I've never had, which is, it's not a problem, it's a good problem to have. I'd have to assess some screening criteria, and I'd work with the board chair to do that.
Thanks.
Supervisor Harris.
Supervisor Lamont, this is your 3rd and final opportunity to speak on this agenda item. And then we'll have Supervisor Conway next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a newbie, I was just wondering, are we locked into going forward to Tuesday? Can the administrator decide to back up a little, or there's no way to do that?
The agenda item is the administrator's agenda item, and the administrator can do with as he wishes, but as in discussing with him up until this point, he felt that the process that he used at that time, that we used, or he used, and did not feel that it was appropriate to withdraw the names after he had the discussion with the individuals, and so he moved forward. But they're his appointments, and so he can, if the board's wish is the board's wish, but they're his appointments, so it would be up to him. Go ahead. Administrator.
Just to supplement, thank you, Mr. Chair. Supervisor Lamont, in direct response to your question, when I spoke with these two individuals again, at that time there were no other applicants. I engaged in a conversation with them to gauge their interest, asked for resumes. I see no reason that they're not qualified to serve. They seem genuinely interested in serving the community, particularly as it relates to the work of the commission. And I talk frequently with our staff about the importance of Marathon County's 6 core values, one of which is integrity. I had conversations with these individuals on multiple occasions, and on the last one I said I would be moving their applications forward. And unless the board tells me that for some reason they're unqualified, I don't feel I would be living the core values of Marathon County by withdrawing them their nominations at this time. If the board directs me to do that and gives me other direction, again, by no means would I refuse that. I work for the board at the pleasure of the board, and I will do my best to affect your will. So at this point, just building on what Chair Gibbs indicated, that was my decision-making process to this point. And moving forward, if there's a better way to do it, and it sounds as though there's quite a number of ways we can improve that process, I'm 100% for it.
Okay, Supervisor Conway is next, and then we have Supervisor Harris.
I just want to agree with Administrator Leonard that you work for us, and we hired you, and we trust your judgment. I do, at least. That's one of the qualities that you have, that you've instilled. So that's a good thing to have, too. As far as the candidate pool, I would really strongly suggest that people that act proactively versus reactively are the ones you want being citizen committee members. Because if you're going to volunteer for something, the last thing you want is someone that it just decides to do something spur of the moment and maybe they don't follow through. I've been on lots of boards where you have folks that really don't participate as much as others, and people that seek it out, that do that without having to be asked by anybody or to like notice it and go, hey, I want to be a part of that. If they've thought about it for a while and give the effort to do that on their own, I think that says quite a bit about them. So there you go.
Supervisor Harris is next.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's great if a lot of people want to apply to different positions. There are other positions as well that are open. I would say this, though, in terms of this particular process, I've looked at the candidates' resumes. I would invite my colleagues to look at their resumes, too, because they are actually very well qualified for these positions. They also follow the process, and we want people to follow process. We as a board follow process. The current process they followed. If we're going to change the process, there's a process for doing that. And the proper place to do that is the Rules Committee, possibly through the Executive Committee. But that would be then moving forward. I think to change the process now, in particular, seems to be then, if we haven't really decided a fair process that applies to all committees, then it seems as though we're picking on just the Diversity Affairs Committee. So we want this process to be fair, uniform, consistent with all committees. The rules would be consistent, and that would take a process that we normally would move through. And I would ask that our colleagues continue to follow that same process. We have these candidates. They've been vetted. They've gone through the process. They did it properly, and they were told that they were chosen by our administrator. I trust his judgment as well. And I think we should vote on those candidates, not vote on whether or not we think now we should change the process when we're voting on this candidate. We're voting on the candidates, not the process at this particular point. So I've asked that the board vote on these candidates, look at their resumes, and if they are well qualified to appoint these candidates, then moving forward through the Rules Committee or the Executive Committee, then make a process that is uniform for applicants throughout, for every committee. And maybe then have a campaign to encourage more citizens to get involved on all committees, all different types of committees, because there are needs in other areas as well that I'd like to, encourage citizens to look at and get involved and learn about. I think it's great if citizens want to get involved in local government, and I encourage that. But there is a process. So I would ask that the board keep that in mind tomorrow when they vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Seeing none, we will move on to item, 9C, ordinances. Item 9C1, Town of Plover, Ordinance 9, Town of Plover rezone, Ordinance 0-9-21. Any questions? Okay, any questions? Item 9C2, to amend Section 2.05, Parent 14, Parent F, General Code of Ordinances, Broadband Task Force, Ordinance 0-10-21. Any questions? Okay, item 9C3, County Road Y, Speed Zone, Village of Hatley, Ordinance 0-11-21. Any discussion? Item 9C4, authorizing the Infrastructure Committee to approve the fees for permits and other charges for services established by the Highway Commissioner. Ordinance 0-12-21. Is there any discussion, any questions? Okay, moving on to resolutions. Item 9D1, Health and Human Services Committee. Item 9D1A is a resolution in support of increased county child support funding. Resolution 20-21. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 9D2 from the County Board of Supervisors. Item 9D2A, change in supervisory district boundaries resulting from the Village of Marathon City annexation, Resolution 21-21. Any questions? Item 9D3B, reorganization of the conservation, from item 9D3, Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee. Item 923A, approve 2020 budget transfers for Marathon County Department of Appropriations, Resolution 22-21. Any discussion? Moving on to item 9D3B, reorganization of the Conservation Planning and Zoning Management Structure, Resolution 23-21. Item 9D3C, acceptance of the epidemiology and laboratory capacity for infectious disease grant funds, Resolution 24-21. Any discussion? Okay, item 9D4 from the Executive Committee, 9D4A, to amend the 2018-2022 Marathon County Strategic Plan to include Comprehensive Plan Objective 3.8, Resolution 25-21. Is there any discussion?
Supervisor Stark.
Supervisor Stark is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've had a number of calls on this objective, and they had to do, there was some concerns about the word equity being used interchangeably with equality, and people had a preference for the word equality over equity because they felt like equity, as it's peppered out through that other resolution that hasn't been brought forward from Diversity Affairs, is that equity and equality are two different things. And there's some confusion, potentially even by some board members, as to what we mean by both. And I would encourage the administrator to address that as he's coming forward. But there may be well, I've had a request from people to amend this objective to change the word, and I know we can't do that tonight, but the equity to equality, because a lot of people that have contacted me view equality as being, that's a good thing, but equity, they viewed that as socialism and communism. And those are the words that constituents use to me. So I just would encourage, as the administrator works through this and as this board reviews this, whether or not they would consider changing that word equity to equality. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Conway and then Supervisor Robinson.
That's a very good point. And they are two different words. Because we've been doing the work on the Community for All. I'm well aware, and I've been called lots of socialistic sort of Leninist names. But here's what it is. Okay, what it boils down to is my favorite example, and I used it today because I had a constituent bring this up to me today, and we had to go back and forth about it. What the Peace Corps does, okay, the Peace Corps, if you go to their site, they have a really good explanation on equality versus equity. Essentially, equality is when everyone has shoes. Equity has everyone that has shoes that fit. And then the Peace Corps does is they take, they have kids and they have everyone take off their shoes, and then they give everybody back different shoes. They give them back all the shoes that they had. So everybody's equal. Everyone has two shoes. Some kids have two left ones. Some kids have too small, too little, too big. So that's the difference between equality and equity. There's no Marxism. There's no Bolshevik anything. It's just making sure that the programs and services that the county provides are provided for adequately for everyone so that people get what they need, not just taking a program and trying to fit people into it. We want to get the programs that the people need. That's all.
Supervisor Robinson.
I'm sort of confused by the comment because the only places in Objective 3.8 that the term equity is used is in promoting health equity in terms of a strategy, unless I'm missing something. And that is a very common term in the medical journals. There are issues of differences, the need for differences of approach. We would approach people, plainclothes people, differently than we would Hispanic and others, and it requires a somewhat unique approach given the circumstances, and that's why equity is an important issue. We will have different approaches in terms of developing that approach in an equitable manner. So I understand that the underlying concerns over that, but I think that particularly in the area of health, whether it's vaccine administration or tuberculosis or others, we will modify our approach based upon the cultural and other differences of individuals, bringing in an equity element that is different than equal as Supervisor Conway said, it's not the same system for different individuals, and the use of the word health equity is very common in the health care area.
Any other discussion? John, you still have your hand up, thank you. Any other discussion? Thank you. We will move on to item 9D, 4B. Opposition to the recommended changes relative to the federal, metropolitan, and micropolitan statistical area standards, and this is on the agenda for action. What is your pleasure?
Supervisor Stark, move to approve.
Supervisor Stark with a motion to approve. Supervisor, is there a second?
Supervisor Robinson.
Who was the second? Supervisor Robinson with a second. I had multiple people at the same time. Thank you. Give a little bit, it should be included in your packet. Is there any discussion? Does anybody need clarification as to what is here?
Supervisor Johnson.
Supervisor Johnson, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Gibbs. I guess I would just like to point out that this would be of great benefit if the standards were kept where they are, rather than raising the threshold for a metropolitan area as is being proposed. But I would also like to point out that this is another instance where we are telling a higher government body our opinion, and we are urging them to take action, and that this is not unusual, as has been asserted in the past. This is something that we should do. It's something that benefits the citizens of Marathon County, and I hope that this is moved on and the message is forwarded. Thank you.
The reason that this is timely is because there is public comment being taken on the proposed changes between micropolitan and metropolitan areas. Currently, a area to be designated metropolitan, the population density in the surrounding area must be 50,000. If this change were to go through, that designation would go to 100,000 to be considered metropolitan. Now, the Community Development Block Grant Program currently uses metropolitan to designate direct beneficiaries for those community development block grant funds. That's not to say that they have to adopt the change if the change were implemented by the entity that is recommending those changes. But if they did and they implemented it, then the WASA area would no longer qualify for potentially CDGB grant direct eligibility allocation, and they would be then forced to utilize the area that represents the CDGB, which Supervisor Harris has pointed out, and we have used their application process for a grant in the past, but that would make the metro area required to compete for the allocation for the allocation to the rural area. There also was brought to the attention that there's also a potential putting the micro, in the term is micropolitan, to the WASA area, potentially would mean that they would be, and the Rural Health Equity, Rural Health Alliance says that that may make them compete for rural dollars also. So that's why it's timely. The public comment period ends at 5 p.m. tomorrow on the Federal Registry, And so the executive committee felt that because it has an impact or potentially has an impact directly on Marathon County and potentially the eligibility, that we weigh in opposition of the proposed change. But it is a direct impact on the citizen, potentially on the Marathon County. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll then proceed to vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the opposition to the recommended changes relative to the federal, metropolitan, and micropolitan statistical area standards, Resolution 26-21, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried, and it is unanimous. Thank you. Announcements and/or requests. Any announcements and/or requests?
Mr. Chair, this is Supervisor Langenhan.
Supervisor Langenhan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is in regards to one of the items from last month's agenda, which is the land and water plan. I wasn't able to make that make the meeting because of a work commitment, but I just want to say thank you to the County Board of Supervisors for approving it. Thank you for the ERC for doing that very important work. And thank you so much to the staff who spent over a year of their time gathering public input and putting this plan together. So again, thank you all for the group effort. And also, I just want to highlight that it took 3 years, but the combined new ERC had a meeting that lasted 23 minutes the other day, which is awesome. Thank you.
Any other announcements and/or requests? Supervisor Conway.
I would just like to congratulate Supervisor Van Cray for adding a constituent to District Number 1 with baby Eleanor.
Congratulations. Supervisor Lamont.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to thank our corporate counsel, Corbett, for his email after our last meeting. And it mentioned in there that the executive committee would discuss the roll call vote thing, and I just wondered if anything happened with that.
Yes, the discussion at the executive committee was that if there is a roll call vote requested prior to the vote taken, it will be automatic. If there's a division request, meaning that people want a roll call after the vote is taken, the only meaningful way to actually have a count is actually we will take a roll call. So roll call will be honored as a request if it's a division of the House, as pointed out last time. So then a roll call will be taken. Okay, any other announcements and/or requests? I do have one announcement. Marathon County is a member of GHT, the Group Health Trust, and there is 5 college scholarships that are available for any applicant that is an employee of Marathon County, and there's 5 $2,000 scholarships. The applications are due by June 9th, 2021. So I encourage anybody that has children that are going to be going to college to fill out those applications and submit them. If you do attend or arrive at the courthouse, please, by all means, supervisors, please check your mailboxes. There is some mail in some of those mailboxes that is quite old. So, any other announcements or requests? Seeing none, we're down to the final agenda item. What is your pleasure?
Move to adjourn.
Vice Chair McEwen with a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And Supervisor Rosenberg with a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to adjourn signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. We stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.